Okay, we are going to learn about the joy of remote control. And I think Bob Smith is up first, and he's going to be joined by Cress here in just a moment. Oh, yeah. Real quick, I need to see if we got any specific announcements. Sorry to hold you up. Any announcements? David, I assume you're going to do something about the 9th? The 9th?
Well, then you said tonight, and I heard tonight, and I thought, uh-oh, what did I sign myself up for that I didn't know about?
I said it too
yes,
fast.
the 9th is our movie night. Certainly bring your wife. I think we've got about 50-ish signed up. I've got some other people from the neighborhood, but around 2 o'clock on the 9th, which is a Monday, we're going to meet at the movie theater in Lake Sumter to see the movie The Greatest Christmas Pageant Ever, and then going to Cody's after that. If you'd like to go, I know a lot of you are already signed up. Sign-up sheet is in the office. You can do it online, and I'll give them a final number probably this weekend.
Great.
It's that time of year again. We have to bring the peace sign out. Peace sign kind of deteriorated over the summer, so I need 4 guys to help move the sign. We're going to test it first, see if the lights work, and then make whatever repairs we need. But so if I could have 4, and Ed, could you open the gates? Okay. So right after breakfast. Yeah.
Great. Any other announcements? Just real quick, I want to remind everybody that the 18th, so I understand last week we did a family day, and Stan tells me, unfortunately, I was in Atlanta for Thanksgiving and wasn't here, but we had somewhere around 80, 85 folks here with family for breakfast. And so we hope we can do something like that again on the 18th, which will be another family day and a celebration of Christmas. As a reminder, the next 2 Wednesdays are indeed the holiday. Church is closed. So we're going to have 2 weeks off of breakfast, and then we'll be back in January. So just a little heads up on what's going on as we go forward. Okay, thanks. Oh, wait a minute, one more. You guys are going to get up, I promise.
I'd like to make a quick announcement. I'm going to be leaving the villages as of the end of the year, and I would like to hire about 3 or 4 guys to help me just fill up a trailer. Everything's going to be already boxed up. It's just going to be a matter of putting it in the trailer, and there's only about 3 pieces of big stuff that's going, a double recliner and a hide-a-bed type of thing. But the rest of it's a little small stuff, and I think it'll take about 2 or 3 hours. And
when are you looking to do that?
we're looking for that for January 3rd.
January 3rd.
And if anybody is interested, let me know, and we'll get the whole thing figured out. And guys, I have thoroughly enjoyed every single one of you. I love coming here, and I've been doing it since we opened up, and I will be doing it in my mind once I get up there. But I will also find some churches up there that do have men's breakfast. I mean, I got to eat them for breakfast, so might as well be at a church and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see anybody else standing up, raising hands, waving hands, anything else. Bob, you're up.
Yay, Bob. Yay, Bob. So good morning, Bob Smith. We were asked to talk about the joy of RC flying, and this thing crashed. Let me see. All right. Technology. Okay, so I was asked to talk about the joy of RC flying, and the joy is when you're actually flying and not crashing. So right now the slide is just showing a particular website of the Southern Eagle Squadron, which is what I belong to. But really, when I was asked to talk about this, you could go a lot of different directions. You could spend a day talking about the planes, technology. But in the beginning here, I'm going to talk about how I got into the hobby itself and where it all began. So right around, press the buttons. Okay. Right around 94, my son was 11 years old. I was looking for something that him and I could get into and enjoy together. So I said, what a great idea. We'll get an RC airplane kit, build it out of balsa wood, put it together, and if we're lucky, maybe we'll fly this thing, maybe. And with no real direction to go with this. You know, I'd grown up like a lot of us with the Cox airplanes that had the wires on them. If you were lucky to get it started, you go to a ball field and maybe you could do that. And maybe it'll go a couple times and maybe you crash it. So I had that kind of experience, but I never really had any experience in remote control airplanes. So we got this Great Plains PT-40 airplane kit, and we put it together. And it took quite a time, and it was a good experience for the both of us. But then once you get that together, you still got to cover it. You still got to put a motor in it. You still got to put electronics, all this stuff. And I go like, oh boy. So, you know, how God puts you in the right place or puts the people around you in the right place. I was at work one day telling somebody about my experience with building this plane with his son. And he said, well, I fly RC airplanes. I said, you do? And he says, I do. And I said, well, great. And I told him my story. He said, well, I'll help you. So he took the plane, helped finish the covering, helped do other things like center of gravity on it, which I could get into later. But anyway, all the adjustments that needed to be done. And lo and behold, we got this thing together. And we were actually able to fly it. If I can press the button. Yeah, and we could actually get this thing up and flying. At this particular time in the world of RC airplanes, we're talking when everything was fuel powered, whatever type of fuel they used, very dirty. You had a lot of danger involved with the propeller and the motor, getting it started, carburetor, adjusting, all the bad things. But we did get this thing flying. And as you saw in the picture, my son was in front of me with an individual behind me. And in those days, flying, when you learned to fly, that's pretty much how it went, is you had somebody that really knew how to fly stand near you. He would take off, or they would take off, and they would hand you the transmitter and say, okay, fly it. And if you had a problem, you'd say, here. And if everybody was lucky, maybe they would save you out of whatever it is that you were doing and bring the plane back safely. So they generally would take off and land and then hand you the transmitter. So we were lucky enough to have that. And as we developed in this and grew, we could actually take off, but landing is a whole different story. Yes, sir. So luckily, the field that we were at had a lot of tall grass in Texas. And so I could take off, and then when it got time to land, I would just look for the tall grass and just bring it down and just cut the motor and just land it go in the grass. And that kept me going and for a long, long time. And oh, yeah. So I don't want that one yet. Yeah, we'll come back to that one. So those are the early days of flying in the 90s. And back in those early days of flying, taking off. Now we're moving a little more modern, but that's okay. Yeah, you're not going to do that in the 90s with although there were some guys pretty good at it. I know you can't see. So this is just a demo flight that I did just to demonstrate today. This one was just taken a few weeks ago, and I was just fooling around, just showing what modern planes could do. And just give it a moment. Yeah, that's Cuban 8 for those that want to know. And do some rolls. Yeah. And I,
Slow it down a little bit.
probably fly better than some of the real pilots, which is another story. Because we do have a lot of real pilots that come out and try to fly these RC airplanes, and you'd be surprised how much they can struggle. They do, especially when the plane's coming toward them and left is right and right's left and things like that. They can struggle, and so there's a little bit more in this. And these are just some quick maneuvers that you can do. Let's just say a starting pilot won't be necessarily whipping a plane like this. If they are, they would claim they're doing it on purpose, but most likely they're not. Just like things in this flight, I was talking to Cress about
Bring
this
it on
flight,
in. I'll watch.
and I was having an individual film it, and I was a little bit under stress to do a lot of things quickly because there's other people wanted to fly, and so there were some mistakes I was making, and I was a little worried. Like if I went inverted upside down there for a moment, you might have saw it dip down, and the dip wasn't necessarily what exactly I wanted it to do, but that's a good example of, let's say, modern and jumping. So back to the 90s real quick. So because of the fuel and flying we did at that time, my son grew out of it, I grew out of it. So right around 2001, my son gives me a call and says, "Dad, I'm back into RC flying." And I said, "You are?" And he says, "I am." I said, "Well, let me come out and see what's going on." So I go out to watch him fly, and my gosh, everything changed. You know, no more, they were flying electric planes, and I'm going, "Electric? What happened?" And he said, "Yeah, Dad." He said, "You know, a lot of people still fly with the fuel, but a lot of people now have the batteries in their planes, and they fly electric." And I said, "Wow, that is just so cool." So now this is a rather large battery, but this is an example of a battery. And so the planes are cleaner, easier to fly, less to maintain. And also the newest thing that came across, if I pick one of these up, is they're foam. So when I started in the 90s with the balsa wood building, if you crashed a balsa airplane, you had a lot of toothpicks. Yeah, and now balsa is still popular, don't get me wrong. All these are foam up here. Balsa airplanes are very popular, more rigid. A lot of pilots enjoy building them, flying them. But again, you crash them, that's it. You know, you might salvage some pieces. The foam airplane, you take something like this, you can crash this, a little hot glue, and you can patch this back together. As a matter of fact, you can see this plane's been patched together a few times. And this is a trainer, but this is a good example. So once seeing that the technology had changed, and now we're electric, I said, I got to get back into this. So right around 21, I jumped back into the hobby. And at that time, my first plane was the air tractor, the crop duster, and that's what got me back in. And I flew that. And next to it is a Valiant. And so that's got me back into the sport. A couple pictures of me flying. There we go. Just a couple pictures of flying, and move on to that. And then we could talk about things like this. And yeah, there's a story. We're going to get to that. But so that got me back into the sport of flying. Now, flying in San Antonio, there was still 50% of the pilots that would fly fuel. Other half would fly electric. So fuel is still popular. But here, I would say the field I fly, the Southern Eagle Squadron field, it's probably 80% are electric. Cleaner, easier. You can go out the field, charge your battery up, fly, recharge your battery, fly again, and you can get anywhere from 5 to 9 minutes, depending on the plane. Some of these planes, like this plane, I could fly probably for a long time. Some of the other ones, maybe not so much, depending on what you do, but they can fly a long time. So this picture has a story. The story would be, we had a contest at the flying field, and the deal was you had to take off, go around twice, and land in the quickest amount of time. No big deal, right? Okay, take off. I'm going around one time, and I'm going wide open. And the wind was gusting that day, let's say 15 miles an hour plus. So when I'm going with the wind, the plane is going much, much faster than it normally would. So when I go to turn, plane said, no turn. I am not turning. And we have some woods to the left of the plane, and that's where it went. And this is the end result. So now this is a particular case. This particular picture would show that you're not going to probably put this one back together. But in most cases you can, but not in this case. You won't be able to. So when I came to Florida, I discovered the villages, came to Florida. I came with one plane. And this is the example where I'm at now. So, yeah. So, yeah, they're growing. And you notice the bed has one, so my wife's really happy about that. So, yeah. And so I have friends that fly, and some of them have like 25 planes plus. And I go like, where do you put them? And, but they do. And that's the hardest part about this hobby is the planes come in all sizes. The air tractor toward the bottom, the yellow one, has got a 60-inch wingspan. And carry that, you only can carry maybe one or two others in your car if you can get it in there. And so that's a big struggle with that. So having too many and picking ones. But I'm pretty happy with the 7. That'll probably keep the rack full. My wife jokes about that, no more than the rack will hold. And so I probably need to let one go to
You need a bigger rack.
Yeah, I need a bigger rack. And you can actually extend that, too. You put a PVC pipe, we could go higher. Don't tell her that. Yeah, so this is the field I fly out, the Southern Eagle Squadron. The Villages has a RC club, too, E-Flyers. And you can look up either E-Flyers or the Southern Eagle Squadron. Both of them are easy to find. The E-Flyers used to fly at the polo field. Today they fly at the Wildwood Community Center fields. It's way back there behind them, but that's where they fly now. They also have an agreement with the Villages to fly at a couple of the larger fields here at Everglades and first responders, but those would be small planes, very, very small. So you would have, but I chose the Southern Eagle Squadron at the time when I came here because you get a gate code, you can go in when you want, and you can leave when you want, and they have a nice covered runway. You can see a lot of the places that you fly these, it's grass fields, and if you're beginning in this hobby, maybe grass is really good, but when you get later on, having a covered runway is really nice, and that's something that you really enjoy. So also, I brought some planes with me to show you examples of different ones. This would be an example of a trainer, and it's been beat up quite a bit, but this is a good trainer. It has really good glide characteristics. It's a high wing plane, takes off very well and easy. And this is an example of a trainer. This plane is a decathlon. This is actually a replica of a real plane, decathlon, that acrobatic pilot flies. And this thing is really sporty, fast, and can do a lot of maneuvers. Not for a beginner. And what would make the difference? A beginning plane, when you go to turn, maybe it turns a little more gradual. Sportier planes, when you go turn, it's gone. And this is some of the newer technology that we get into. This is an electric ducted fan jet. So, and in the RC world, they do have real jet planes, turbine, but at our particular field, we don't allow turbine. But this is electric ducted fan. And these are a lot of fun, fast, very fast. That's the only issue usually people going to jets have is they're so fast when you come in to land or anything, it can be a little scary. How fast? Very fast, over 100. Oh yeah, we have a lot of RC pilots that'll fly in the 120 range easy. This one probably around 80 to 90, but it does run a 6-cell battery, which is a rather large battery. Anyway, it's really large, heavy, probably. But So the trainer is probably in the very slow, 40, 50 maybe, if you're lucky. Wide open, maybe a little more going with the wind, if there's some wind, but not very fast. The decathlon, a little faster. Decathlon, probably going 80, 90 without a modification. Some of the guys will modify that to maybe get up to 100. It's just every plane just has different characteristics. And I have my technology asking me all kinds of questions. And with that. So with that said, and the new technology coming back in 21, so there was a lot of changes in the hobby itself, and I'm going to just talk a little bit about them. First off, when you fly RC airplanes, most of the fields are going to require you become part of Aeronautical Model Association, AMA. And the biggest reason behind that is insurance. It provides insurance to the flying fields so that they're protected in case something happens. AMA, or Academy of Model Aeronautics, has 170,000 members, 2,500 clubs. It costs approximately $85 a year to join, but it is a requirement unless you're going to go out there and fly on your own. Also, around 22, 23, the FAA got involved in our flying much more than a lot of us would have liked, but they did. And so there's new requirements there. So some of the requirements are we actually have to have an account with them and register our planes. So if you'll look on the tail end of the planes I have up here, you'll see my name, but you'll actually see an FAA number. Now, I have just one account, and I can list all these planes under it and use the same FAA number, but I do have them registered with FAA. Also, you have to take a trust exam, and Cress will speak a little on some of the requirements that drones have and all that, but the trust exam basically gets you a basic understanding of what you can and can't do with these things. And like the number one rule that I would remember is you can't fly over 400 feet, you know, things like that. So basic requirements. And then along with that, they created this thing that called FAA Recognized Identification Area, FRIA. So the FAA got further involved and said, okay, we want all these planes and drones and anything that flies like this, experimental or otherwise, to have remote ID. And that became a big deal for the AMA. And so AMA got involved, and they created this thing they called, what I said is FAA Recognized Identification Area. So if you have a club, and working with, in our case, we work with AMA, and we get recognized by FAA, then you could fly at our club field without this remote ID. If I wanted to fly this plane, let's say, at a field or park, my requirement would be that it would have a remote ID put into it and it'd be identified in that way. So that's another big push for a lot of the clubs to become FRIA or recognized by the FAA as flying fields so that we won't need that. And so that's part of the new requirements of today. And so the remote ID cost $100, just to give you an idea of that. So a lot of the RC pilots around 22, 23 were not very happy with all that going on. So the good side of the house, though, is if you become part of a club, whether it's E-Flyers or Southern Eagle, and they are a recognized FAA site, you won't have to have that requirement. That's the good side. The bad side is if you don't fly with them, then you do have to have those things. And exactly, just what you just said there in the end is supposedly they can track these things, but let's be realistic. The little teeny box that's put inside this plane, and Cress will talk on that.
Yeah, so I only heard part of that. Give me that question again about remote ID. Yeah, so it was set up because airplane guys set the rules for us remote guys. Okay, and so airplane guys are now required to have something we call ADSB, Automatic Dependent Surveillance, out. And that allows a bigger data block for the big style of these to be identified by the FAA and see when you might be messing up, okay? And it's not, they didn't approve ADSB for remotes, so they came up with this thing called Remote ID. You can get an app on your phone, I have one, turn it on, and if there's a remote ID drone flying in the, close to you, you'll see it. One of the things we don't like about it, as if there weren't enough, is it tells you the position of the airplane. It also tells you the position of this guy, where I'm at. So if you're one of those guys that don't like drones and think we're all pervs, which maybe is true, I don't know. You know, Bubba can come find us. And it was it still is a serious issue for our ladies that fly. If you're a lady and you're flying independently out somewhere, and Bubba decides, hey, I don't like the drone, let's go find it. He pulls up his app, and he goes, oh, she's right over there. Let's go beat that out of her. So, not good. Here's the good side of this. Like many other things in the FAA, remote ID doesn't work very well. So if I turn on my drone, because all my drones got remote ID, it has to, because I'm a commercial operator, and you go out in the parking lot with your app, there's a good chance you won't even see my drone. So it's not very robust yet. So that's too bad. Question, John?
If Trump cancels these regulations, is that going to be a good deal or a bad deal for you guys?
So it's unlikely that he will cancel the remote ID. Here's the thing. Probably within the question was if Trump cancels the regulations, you know, how will that change things? It's unlikely that he will change that. These guys, not so much his, because they go to the FRIAs and they fly in their confined airspace and they're charted.
We're happy.
Airplane guys know where those are.
Most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time. Should know where those are. But these, I can go anywhere. When it comes time, I'll show you some video. We're going to hold that one for another time because we're running short. I want to be, you know, good to your time. But pretty soon there's going to be more of those flying in the national airspace system than there are airplanes. There are multi-10,000 of these bad boys flying around, and unfortunately, a lot of folks don't. I want to be careful. A lot of folks are not aware of the rules. They're not aware of the rules, and so they do things that are not law-abiding, okay? But these things are part of the national airspace system now, and as big boys like FedEx and UPS begin to get their certifications and permissions to fly packages and stuff and be out of line of sight, he said, we got to see them all the time. I got to see mine all the time. As they get permissions and certifications to not have to be in line of sight, this is going to be part of the national airspace system, just like your 747, okay? So the likelihood that those regulations pertaining to safety and being able to identify people, that's not going away.
So, let me just finish up my part, and then we'll let Crest go, and then we'll take a lot of questions. But I was going to say, so I showed the 90s and how we had to stand next to each other and so on. Today, the transmitters that we have today can work wirelessly. So a modern technology, modern transmitter like this, if I have another one, I can connect wirelessly, and I can actually press a button, give them control, And then when they are losing control, I can let go of the button and take over, which makes it much easier today to fly and train somebody. So with that said, I'll go ahead and pass it on to Chris now so he can start the drone part of this. And then what we'll do, we'll let him run through, and then we'll take a bunch of questions.
Yeah, I'm to be, good with your time, not to take it. I'm going to request that I get to go later. I'll do another time, because I may go as long as him. I get long-winded sometimes when I'm talking about drones. So maybe you'll get another session, and I'll talk about drones. Let's take some questions. One of the things, and sort of the reason he hands it off to me, I'm part of the FAA safety team, the FAST team. I'm an FAA volunteer, not a paid employee, but I'm a FAST team guy, which makes me the regulation guy. I'm the safety officer for the drone club, for the aviation club in the villages, and for my local Experimental Aircraft Association out at Inverness. I got a stack of certificates, I guess, for big airplanes and little drones and stuff like that. So I'll try and, the regulation stuff, he's going to deflect to me, and that's okay, because that's what I do.
Chris, how about the 18th of January? You on?
I should be able to do that, sure.
All right.
18th of January is probably fine.
January 18th, we'll hear from Chris.
Yeah, part of that is I got a place to be too, so I'm going to duck out of here as soon as we're done. Yeah. We'll take a couple of questions, though. Let's try it.
As far as the weight goes, because they're styrofoam, is there balanced weight in them? Because if it's windy, I'm guessing that it could be a little bit of an issue. Are they weighted in some fashion?
Yes, so there's a lot of ways to do that. The batteries help with that. So center of gravity for these planes is very, very important. So the manufacturer will tell you so far back on the wingtip, for example, I don't know if you can see those little dark colored circles. Anyway, that's center of gravity. So you want to put the battery in or weight so the plane would be level when I hold it like that. So I would put the battery in, hold the plane up with my fingers and make sure it's kind of level.
And I'm assuming you take additional batteries with you when you fly?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Usually I have a couple batteries for each plane. Or you can take one, fly one, take it back in, charge it, move it on. The batteries can be recharged. They can last years handled properly. I have some batteries as old as 21 that are still flying well. So batteries are pretty good. There is a lot of things to be said about because they're LiPo batteries. You'll notice that I use a flame-proof battery case, and that is a big issue in using those kind of batteries.
Yeah, these are lithium batteries, and we get some, you can see some serious fires.
Yeah,
with
so this could be a danger, but I try to protect myself in the best way I can. So I have a flame-proof bag for that.
I got a quick drone question. Are all the drones, no matter the size, have to follow the FAA? Because my grandson's looking for a little handheld drone.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there any rules around that? Do they have to even register those?
The answer is maybe. Okay, it depends. Like everything else in the FAA, it depends. So here's what I'm going to recommend. Here's what I did for my cousin and his grandson, and they were going, yeah, we had this little, $50 drone, flew it around the house and broke it into a million pieces. And thought so he said, you're a drone guy. What do you want to do? I said, well, here's the drone you need to get. And then, or maybe before, actually, go out and look at the trust exam that he mentioned. The trust exam is for, and is required for every drone operator, I don't care how big it is. Okay? But here's the thing. Once again, your FAA dollars at work. The trust exam is not really an exam in the truest sense, because you can't fail. They'll keep asking you the questions over and over again until you get it right, and then you get your certificate, okay? And it will give you the basic understanding of what you can and cannot do with a drone, regardless of size, weight, or number of props or anything. So the trust exam is the place to start. The short answer is a drone under 250 grams, which is about 0.55 pounds, have a lot less restrictions than bigger drones. Okay? Does that answer the trust exam? Oh, let me mention this. I mentioned this when I'm talking to the drone club and when we get new members and folks that are interested. If you go to a website and they say, hey, I've got the trust exam, $25, and we'll get you certified, in one easy try. Run the other way. The trust exam by nature is free. Okay? The FAA said it's free. Now, there are people, the FAA doesn't provide it. They have providers, but it's free. Google trust exam, and you can take it for free. So that part's, yeah. If somebody tries to charge you for it, that's a bad deal.
And Cress mentioned the planes, 0.55, all the way up to 55 pounds. Now, once you get after 55 pounds, then it's a whole different set of requirements. But these things can get quite large.
So there's a lot of news lately about drones flying over UK air bases and in Trump's Mar-a-Lago. How can they not know who these planes are, who these drones are, and why they can't just knock them out?
That's why there's remote ID.
Right.
Okay, that's what they're trying to do,
But
and that's why remote ID isn't going to go away.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, it does work. It just doesn't. Yeah, I can't pull up my app and figure out who's flying drones in Southern California from here in Florida, but and the original purpose. At least the sort of intended, the way they sold it purpose, was for law enforcement and emergency services to be able to, your Sumter County Fire Department, or Police Department, Sheriff's Department, they invested, I want to say they had to put like $120,000 worth of drone equipment on the shelf in the closet when your Congress said, oh, DJI, that's who makes most of these. It's a Chinese company. They're spying on you in the U.S., so we've got to ground everything that's made by Chinese companies. The problem is the folks that support them monetarily here in the U.S. are U.S. drone makers. And if you'd like to figure out whether my drone with a little camera on it can shoot pictures as good as satellites? Are you guys kidding me? All the infrastructure's already there. I mean, the satellites that exist are far and away better than anything you can shoot with a drone. It's clearly the U.S. manufacturers simply cannot compete with the quality of these. And I'll talk about agriculture and other things when I get my turn. But yeah, that is a problem. Go ahead.
Yeah, what kind of range do they have as far as how far away can you be from your plane or your drone?
How far can I see it?
Yeah, same with aircraft. These things can fly further than you can see. So,
yeah, I can easily, that's one of the rules that people break on a regular basis. They fly beyond the visual line of sight, which is illegal for everybody.
And
with certain exceptions. Yeah. There's a rule, well, like everything else, there's a rule. Right now, there's almost no drones that meet the rule to be able to do that. When I mentioned the FedEx and the UPS guys, they're going to be certificated under a different set of rules.
In the early days of RC flying, they were under FM transmitters, and it was so bad in those early days that if you went out in the field with your transmitter, you had to go to the frequency board and make sure your frequency was available before you even turned it on. Because if you turned on your transmitter and somebody else was flying, it would crash their plane. So now we jump to today, none of that. The transmitters are tied to the planes. Planes can go quarter mile further than you can see, and still fly and still carry on. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so if you step out to the outer place, Pastor Jonathan put some of my drone video up for Coleman Oaks Thrift Store. I'm shooting video out there every couple of weeks. Full disclosure, I'm a commercial certified drone operator. I operate under a different set of rules than the folks under the trust exam. And because of that, I can do that work for the church. That's considered a commercial operation, even though I don't get paid for it. Yeah, no, yeah, it's just one more thing I do. In fact, when we get to my part, the video I have near the end of my presentation is the drone footage I shot and did some work for ERT teams to demonstrate to the United Methodist Conference, Southern Conference, that a drone operator could maybe keep some of your ERTs guys safe, because I can shoot photos of roofs before they ever set foot on one. And we'll see how that goes. So far we've been doing mucking and demoing and stuff like that. Hadn't been much call for me to shoot any roofs because we haven't been tarping since I've been ERTing, but we probably will again, so we'll see.
Can you glide with a prop plane as opposed to that fighter? Does it affect how you glide?
Sure. So each plane has its own characteristics. So that's why we have a lot of planes, because each plane has its own. So the beginner RC plane, the apprentice, it'll glide forever. I could actually shut the motor off halfway coming around the field, still bring it around, land it. If I shut the motor off on this thing, it's coming down. So I got to be ready, and it doesn't just come down; it's coming down fast. So that's going to be the difference. Where the apprentice might come around, have a little more glide characteristic, and I can safely bring it down. I shut the power on this. I should be over something I want it to come down on because it's coming down. Now, the craziest story I can tell you, like an example, is we have many of our pilots out in the field have thrust reverse on their planes. So they can actually set their transmitters up that they throw a switch and it reverse the motor. And it's really good for planes like this because we don't have enough flight line to really land this one really well. Matter of fact, I usually try to hit the grass before I get in the flight line just to slow it down. So they'll hit thrust reverse in order to stop the plane on flight line. We have one pilot taking off, gets halfway up in the air, hits thrust reverse by mistake. Puckered up, hit another switch, saved the plane. Now, that's a good pilot. Hit thrust reverse mid-flight and then save it. Do you have thrust reverse on your planes?
I have computer controlled, so...
On your real planes, do you have
on my real planes. No, I don't fly anything that has thrust reversers.
Are you limited on how high you can go?
400 feet.
400 feet AGL, above ground level.
Which is where we fly is interesting because we have we fly off of Rolling Acres Road. That's where the Southern Eagle Squadron flies. And there's some private fields out there. And I swear, there's planes below 400 coming over our field. They'll buzz us every once in a while.
Earlier, you guys were mentioned thrust reversers, and I never did divulge to the journeyman. Do you remember when we brought the jet engine in for, I think it was Apollo 13?